few days ago, I competed in my second competitive tournament with HellTongue. I started working on the version 2 design as soon as I got back from Robotronica. During those fights, I noticed some problems, and I also got some advice from some actual people, and not just my brain telling me, yeah, it'll probably work. I got a lot of good advice from people who've spent collective years in the sport, recommending building techniques, robot features, and parts to use. And with the experience I gained from picking out and handling robot parts the first time, I was able to build this robot in only $1,100. In all seriousness, the building process of this robot was, unfortunately, arguably even more of a disaster than the first one. Not only was the college workshop that I used closed because summer, but because of shaky hands and using components that were not suitable for my application, I ended up breaking like $220 in speed controls like a dumbass. You'll see what I mean in a bit. Thankfully, combat robotics is one of those hobbies where throwing money solves most problems. I know it's not sustainable, but I absolutely promise I'll figure it out. I absolutely promise. Okay, before I talk about anything else, I'm going to go over a few corrections that I need to make from the last video. I misspelled the name of the artist for the song I used in the video. His name is actually Kerry King with a K, not a T. The dimensions of the robot I gave you were actually incorrect. It was actually 18 centimeters in each direction, not 16. As it turns out, my fight with Punk was not the first time his front reg got ripped off. It was his first time it happened with this iteration, but it has happened in the past. Apparently, during my fight with Vasilis, the reason why he was running into the wall so much was not because he was running away, but because he was trying to bend his weapon shaft back into place so it could spin again. Me and the judges just interpreted it as him running away from me. Now, with that out of the way, let's go over the design of version 2 and what is different. First off, the weapon design has changed. I replaced the stolen Just Cuz weapon design with one of my own. I shaped it with gradual curves to reduce air resistance, pushing air out of the way instead of slamming into it. It also has a larger diameter, which combined with a flatter wedge design makes the robot's reach slightly less abysmal. It is also 90 grams heavier than the first weapon, is mounted to and powered by a Repeat Robotics Beetle weight hub, and is made out of AR600 steel rather than untreated S7 tool steel, which probably helped its performance, I don't know. The dimensions are very similar to version 1, only being 1 centimeter shorter. However, the weight of this robot is still exactly 3 pounds. Internally, almost everything had to be replaced to accommodate my new ideas. I upgraded to a 1050 mAh battery from the previous 800 mAh battery. I used 16 gauge wires and added a bunch of connectors to minimize soldering. I originally also tried to use bullet connectors so none of the connections would need soldering, but that didn't go down super well. To increase power and save weight, I switched to a brushless drive system, using the Repeat 2207 motors and the Repeat dual brushless ESC. And as much as I love Repeat Robotics, their dual brushless ESCs just don't do it for me. I've just in general had bad experiences with these boards. It could be because I got the most powerful motors I could find, but these things are a huge pain in the ass. I ended up frying like 4 of the boards, that's like $200. Even after I finally got it fixed, literally the night before the tournament, I had constant brownouts, disconnections, and other electrical issues throughout the day. Here's a tip from me. If you're building a Beetle weight with powerful motors, use 2 individual brushless ESCs, trust me. One cool thing about the Repeat motors is that they have a built-in mounting system. Just screw the motor in and you're done. Way easier than the stupid mounting plates I had to deal with before. As for the weapon ESC, I originally liked how the Just Cuz ESC performed in my last tournament. I found a cheaper generic version online, so I bought that to save money. And unfortunately, as I probably should have guessed, it wasn't designed or programmed for combat robots, and it showed. And since I also kind of just suck at coding, I eventually just said F it and reused the same Just Cuz ESC from last time. And it actually worked really well. I kept the same neoprene wheels as before, but I changed what I used to make them sticky. Last time, the stuff I used was rubber glue. Pretty standard for bots using neoprene wheels. But this time, I added a second ingredient that improves how long the stickiness lasts. What is it? That's a secret. But here's a demonstration. Now, I've come to realize my robot has pretty poor weight distribution. However, thanks to the extra sticky wheels, this isn't as noticeable as it would have been if I just used rubber glue alone. The forks are now made out of AR500 steel instead of S7 tool steel, and they are slightly longer, not by much, but enough to be noticeable. On each side, I added a TPU side fork. These work similarly to the side forks on BattleBots like Manta. They help with flanking while turning, and make it harder for me to get flanked. TPU is also what I used for the mounting plates now. They were originally aluminum, but that was overkill. A lot of bots just screw their weapons directly into the TPU anyway, so I did the same, partly because I also needed the extra weight budget. I also just realized that I never showed you what the weapon mount looks like outside of the bot, so here it is. Because I am now using the Repeat Robotics hub, I had to order a custom shoulder bolt for this thing, since the one that came with the motor was way too long. Even then, I had to screw it directly into the plastic instead of using a nut, or else it would extend into the chassis where the battery sits. Some people were skeptical, but it worked just fine. And finally, you may have noticed these massive holes in the armor. I did that to reduce the number of perimeter layers needed in the print while still keeping the same overall armor thickness. Version 1 used 10 perimeter layers, which would have been way too heavy here, so I used 6 instead. To maintain thickness, I measured how wide 6 layers were and made every armor piece exactly double that width, so the 6 perimeter layers apply to each side, giving me a total of a 12 layer thickness. That way, you can have super thick TPU armor without extra perimeters piling up where they aren't needed. It saved a ton of weight. Just make sure to leave enough space between your armor and your internals. Some other things to mention are, I got a Repeat Titanium anti-horizontal wedge because apparently you can't use TPU. Glad I didn't find that out the hard way. I also added a wheelie bar. My robot was doing wheelies when accelerating fast, and I didn't want to deal with magnets, so I just did that. And finally, I couldn't get my hands on the high quality stickers because the f***ing college workshop was closed. And yeah, that's about everything that has changed. Now, it took me a lot longer to perfect this design than version 1. That, and the fact that I kept breaking the drive speed controller, means I couldn't really get as much time as I wanted to practice. The constant practicing is probably why I broke so many boards in the first place. As you can imagine, driving a lot will wear down your pieces on your bot and make them weaker. Which is why most pros, unlike me, don't really drive their bots that much other than competition. And they get their practice by competing in a lot of different weight classes. After all, driving with something trying to destroy you is very different than hitting a stationary object over and over. I did get some cool shots though. Oh, and yes, I am planning on building a battle box eventually. In case you didn't know, I don't currently have a box to test it in yet, as ones large enough to actually drive in are kind of expensive to build and hard to make. So for safety, I just stand really far away. Hey there. This worked fine with HellTongue V1. But now that my robot can actually hit things, it has become clear that it is not safe enough. I do have an idea on how to make it safer for me, so hopefully you will be seeing that in the next video. Okay, before I get into the fights, I'd like to thank a few awesome people who helped this project become a reality. First off, I was sponsored by the Kinship Center, a youth group for those with special needs, and Alterna Sin Fronteras, a banking option in America for undocumented immigrants. These are businesses operated by family members who are more than happy to help out if I put their logo on my bot, so thank you. I'd also like to give special thanks to the Sierra College Robotics Club and WCCRL Discord server for giving me advice and teaching me how to navigate combat robotics, and Sierra College Advanced Manufacturing for water jetting my steel parts. And with all that out of the way, let's get to the fights. Now, despite me having been in a tournament before, the NorCal Summer Smash was nothing like Robotronica. First off, it was entirely outside in 100-degree weather, and you had to provide your own table, chairs, and shade. But also, unlike Robotronica, being a small local event, this event was the largest tournament in Northern California. As such, there were extremely intimidating robots and experienced drivers. I, of course, was terrified, especially after they revealed my first opponent, Anglebiter, a scaled-up version of a very competitive ant weight made by the same people who made F3. The only real advantage I had over this bot was that my AR-600 weapon was harder than his 4340 weapon. But as the fight got underway, Anglebiter very quickly got the upper hand. He won all of the weapon-to-weapon encounters we had because I was spinning my weapon too slowly. I did this because during testing the previous night, I ran into some pretty serious gyro issues, and because my bot still didn't do well inverted, I decided to be much more conservative with my weapon. However, because Anglebiter spun up his weapon to a much faster speed, I couldn't get the upper hand. After knocking me over, Anglebiter went after my exposed backside, hitting it and causing serious armor damage and ripping off my wheelie bar. After recovering from that hit, I lost another tip-to-tip with Anglebiter due to, again, my weapon being too slow, inverting me a second time. I didn't really know what to do at this point, and after getting hit a third time, I suffered a brownout. I mistook this as my robot being broken, so I tapped out. But then, I flicked my control stick and my robot moved again, and I was like, shit, this is the first time it happened, and I'll tell you, it won't be the last. At least I didn't make this mistake again. My fight with Anglebiter also revealed another mistake I made. When my back armor got hit, there was a ridiculous amount of splitting. TPU is not the strongest material used for robots, but the amount of damage suffered from one hit was insane. Like, this shouldn't happen with TPU. And I very quickly found out why. The reason this happened was because I used 98A TPU, printed at 210 Celsius. Yeah, this happened because V1 had a shitload of stringing when I was printing the chassis, and I really didn't want to deal with that again. So I found a video that told me that printing TPU at a lower temperature than intended can eliminate stringing, which worked actually. But nowhere in the video does he mention that this can also reduce layer adhesion, which means I had to find that out the hard way. If you want to reduce stringing for a light duty flexible part, then this will probably be fine, but if you want something strong, do not do this. After figuring this out, I realized that I probably didn't have enough time to switch chassis. But since the next bot I was fighting was a control bot anyway, I just super glued it together and figured it would work for now. My next fight was one that was originally supposed to happen at Robotronica if the opponent didn't forfeit. Shove Off. Now, back during my first tournament, I was afraid of this bot because of its high seed and intimidating appearance. However, after it got dominated by another control bot, I was a little more confident. However, as I set my bot down and began to drive, I realized that I forgot to apply the secret formula to my wheels, causing me to slide around the box as if it was made of ice. I did still have a shred of control though, so as the fight got underway, I was still pretty confident I'd be able to get a win. Shove Off did have a speed and agility advantage over me, which led to a few close calls, but because I had a weapon and forks lower to the ground than his wedges, I was able to capitalize on most of Shove Off's attacks. Most of this fight was just Shove Off trying to attack me from the side and me hitting him with my weapon whenever he got too close, causing me to roof him a couple of times. Eventually, I was able to hit Shove Off's remaining left wheel, breaking his left side drive. But before I could do anything about it, however, I suffered from another disconnection. This one lasted for several seconds, triggering the knockout countdown. Fortunately, Shove Off was unable to capitalize, and I reconnected before the timer ran out. Shove Off's left drive did not fix itself, forcing him to crab walk. But before I could do anything else, the match was over.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This goes to the judges. Robots on.
Shove Off was a nice relaxing fight after the stressful defeat to Anglebiter. He was also built and driven by a friend of mine who's currently helping me with my brownout issues. After that fight, I had no time to waste, as I knew that my next fight would be against a horizontal spinner, and that superglue would not be able to hold up against the hits from the large blade it had. Thankfully, switching everything over was much easier than with version 1. I was able to do it within 15 minutes, and my robot came out of it in perfect working condition. Okay, maybe not perfect working condition, but it didn't damage the robot further like last time. And my opponent was none other than the almighty Sauron. No, that Sauron. This was my first ever fight with a horizontal, and as such, I pulled out the titanium wedge. Now, I wasn't really sure what to expect with this bot, so I decided to play cautiously, only very slowly approaching and prioritizing keeping my wedge between my bot and his weapon. I had also learned from my mistakes, and made sure to spin my weapon faster to increase the chances of winning a weapon-on-weapon encounter. Despite Sauron's attempts to get around me and reach my sides, I was able to properly defend, and our first few exchanges were very even. But eventually, after a poor weapon-on-weapon encounter with me that launched him into the corner, Sauron flinched, and I was able to hit his vulnerable body. I continued this strategy, make him come to me and wait for him to screw up. With this, I continued racking up points by getting small hits on him until my robot disconnected, leaving me in a very vulnerable position. Thankfully, Sauron, being the gentleman he is, backed away, probably assuming my bot was bricked. Unfortunately for him, I reconnected, approached, and then hit his weapon hard, debelting it, and leaving him unable to use the knowledge of my robot's shoddy connection. After I disabled his weapon, the fight turned into one very similar to the previous one, where my opponent would try to get around me and push me around, and I would just smack them whenever they got too close. However, unlike the previous fight, I was actually able to get the opponent stuck on the wall. There were no unsticks for this arena, and I could have just taken the win. But I decided that I was having too much fun, so I decided to free him and play with my food a little more. This did lead to a couple more close calls where I disconnected again, but I never stayed down. Although I didn't knock him out, I had control over the arena for nearly the entire match.
8, 9, release. This fight is over in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Robot topics go to the judges. Your winner by unanimous decision is HellTongue!
I found the fight with Sauron very enjoyable, probably the most fun I've had during a fight. My mom was a little mad that I risked losing because I wanted to have fun, but it was okay. However, I knew that the next fight would not be a fun game. I was now to face one of the most vicious robots in the tournament, Percussive Maintenance. This robot is a very wide vertical spinner, known on the west coast as a Zephyr clone. It has its forks super far apart to trap robots in between them and hit them with their massive vertical spinner. This robot has been proven to be very effective against other kinds of vertical spinners. For example, here's what this robot did to the guy who won the last tournament, F3. As you could expect, I really didn't like my chances against this guy, especially after I tried driving and realized that my left wheel wasn't working. But as the match started, my left wheel fixed itself, allowing me to move, and then this happened. After pushing into him with my forks, I lifted him off the ground and toppled him. As it turns out, my forks were just long enough to prevent Percussive Maintenance from reaching my bot without being forced on top of them. Because of this, I was able to get him in a vulnerable position and hit his side armor. Although my strategy was unintentional at first, I very quickly realized that right in between his forks is exactly where I wanted to be. I continued making sure that my bot always faced Percussive Maintenance to prevent him from attacking me without him getting on top of my forks, and whenever I had the opportunity, I would charge head on. But then, after both of us charged at the same time particularly hard, I took the biggest hit in my career so far. Despite me being launched across the entire arena, my bot was able to shrug off this hit. Percussive Maintenance was not so lucky. The bot stalled and was rendered unfunctional, giving me my first knockout of the day. I will admit, there were a few other factors that led me to winning this fight other than decent driving and good design. The only reason Percussive Maintenance stopped working in the first place was because the switch screw became loose and disconnected. But also, Percussive Maintenance was absolutely obliterated by Not Dead Yet the previous match, and couldn't put everything back together in time, which you could call luck, but then again, I had to replace my entire chassis after my Anglebiter fight, and my robot still functioned just as good as before. If this fight wasn't a sign of my improving skill, then it was certainly a real-life example of the quote, "You don't win in the arena, you win in the pits." Okay, I also have to admit, when I said that HellTongue shrugged off the massive hit from earlier, that was kind of a lie, because after I placed the battery and tried to test my wheels, I could not get the left wheel to connect no matter how hard I tried. I even had Cormac come over and try to solder on a BEC unit to fix it, but when that didn't work, we just concluded that I had a dead channel and I'd have to crab block for the rest of the tournament. So yes, I fried 5 dual brushless ESCs making this thing. My next fight would be against another horizontal spinner named John117, and I'm just gonna say, this was the most nothing burger fight I have ever fought. Both our bots were not working properly, and the only reason there was a knockout is because one lasted slightly longer than the other. I'm just gonna play the full fight at 2 times speed, because I have literally nothing else to say about it. Like, there wasn't even a single hit between us.
That was sad. Okay.
So yeah, despite only having half a drive system, my robot didn't break down like John did, giving me the win. You could also argue that this was luck, but the quote from earlier still applies, as John was in a similar position to me and Percussive Maintenance. Unfortunately, however, my next opponent was working properly. Nightlight is an undercutter with a fork configuration, a very formidable opponent. Before the match, the driver came up to my station several times to spy on me and figure out what configuration I was using, which is honestly something I absolutely would have done, but was also pretty smart because I came up with an experimental fork configuration to deal with a forked undercutter. But still, fuck you. I tried to deceive her for like 10 minutes, delaying the fight, but eventually I was like, well, I only have one wheel, it's not like I'm gonna win, so I just went with my wedge. I also thought that adding a fresh wheel with no residual secret formula on it might make it driving easier. But when I put my bot into the arena, I realized it just made things much worse. It was so bad I couldn't even get to the corner myself. I needed the referee to push me there. Now, you might be thinking that there is absolutely no chance I could win this fight. That is because there wasn't. Thankfully, Nightlight knew I was on my last legs and didn't really attack me. She just sort of sat there, as if she was waiting for me to die. I did do everything I could to stay in the fight as long as possible. I escaped a few countdowns by using gyroscopic force to get me to sputter around the arena. Said gyroscopic force eventually flipped me. It was at this point that Nightlight got tired of waiting and hit me, flipping me right side up again. My robot suffered another brownout, and by the time I reconnected, it was already too late.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is a knockout. Your winner is Nightlight.
So yeah, that was my performance at the NorCal Summer Smash. 4 wins, 2 losses, all culminating in an impressive 5th place finish. At least I am proud of it. My goal originally was to be able to win just one fight. I wasn't really confident against any of these opponents. And yet, I reached my goal 4-fold. Even if I didn't get any wins, I got heaps of experience from this event. I'm definitely going to be using 2 individual drive ESCs from now on. I'll also be switching out the receiver for one made for BattleBots, and TPU to 98A printed at 235 Celsius. I'm also going to be completely redesigning my robot a second time to fix some of the mistakes I made, but you'll just have to wait to see that. Actually no, I'm going to flash a preview of what my robot's going to look like for 1 frame. Ready? Bam! There you go. The next competition I'm planning on going to is the SCAR Maker Faire Orange County 2025 event, so thank you all for watching, and I'll see you there. So, okay, this isn't in the script, but I just wanted to go over how much of a fucking nightmare editing this video was. I made the mistake of doing it on a fucking iPad, and it only has 64 gigabytes of data on it, and this project, because of all the slow-mo footage, takes up like 25 fucking gigabytes. It's insane. Do you have any idea how laggy this shit was when I was closing out the video? I could barely move anything, dude. It was so annoying. So yeah, that was my video. I'll just go fuck off now, and I'll see you next time. Bye.